In a world driven by influence, perception, and hidden agendas, what does it really mean to be good? Or rather, does being good truly get you ahead? Enter Niccolò Machiavelli, the Florentine diplomat whose name alone has become synonymous with cunning, deceit, and raw political strategy. To some, he is the godfather of manipulation. To others, a misunderstood realist who dared to describe the world not as it should be, but as it is. His most infamous work, The Prince, written in 1513, did not offer a guide for moral leadership. It offered survival tactics for those who sought power, and more importantly, those who wished to keep it. And now, centuries later, these very strategies echo through our boardrooms, bedrooms, social feeds, and negotiation tables. But what if these Machiavellian principles weren't just for tyrants or politicians? What if they could be harnessed subtly to better navigate the psychological minefields of everyday life? Welcome to The Art of Deception, a psychological deep dive into using Machiavelli's timeless strategies not to corrupt, but to understand, influence, and ultimately thrive. To understand Machiavelli is to first strip away the caricature. He was not an advocate for evil. He was a student of power. Born in Renaissance Italy, a time when betrayal and bloodshed were part of everyday politics, Machiavelli saw leaders rise and fall, not because of their virtue, but because of their cunning. His work didn't create deception, it merely described it. In The Prince, he suggests that morality is at times a luxury a ruler cannot afford. For Machiavelli, the goal was stability, strength, and success, even if that meant lying, flattering, or betraying. His logic: people are not always rational or honest, so why should a leader bind themselves to rules no one else follows? But here's the twist. Machiavelli wasn't simply writing for kings. His advice, though brutal, reflects a deep understanding of human nature. Fear, desire, loyalty, envy, these emotional forces govern behavior in every corner of life, from medieval courts to modern cubicles. Let's explore a few of Machiavelli's most influential strategies, starting with the phrase that turned him into a villain for centuries: the ends justify the means. This isn't a call for villainy, it's a recognition of consequence-driven decision-making. If your goal is noble or even necessary, do the methods used to get there matter as much? This idea is used daily in business, politics, and personal life. Whether you're sugarcoating bad news or hiding your full intentions during a deal, you are, knowingly or not, channeling Machiavelli. Another strategy is appearance over substance. Machiavelli argued that it's more important to seem virtuous than to be virtuous. In a world where people judge by first impressions, optics are everything. This is not hypocrisy, it's psychology. Think of social media influencers, public figures, or even the polished facade we present at job interviews. We curate, filter, and manage perception constantly. As Machiavelli would say, everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. And finally, consider the rule: keep your friends close and your enemies closer. This isn't just about paranoia, it's about strategic awareness. Understanding your adversaries allows you to predict and even influence their next move. In modern life, this might mean staying on good terms with a workplace rival or maintaining a polite distance with someone who once betrayed your trust. Deceptive, perhaps, but also strategic, protective, and at times necessary. We often recoil at the word deception, imagining villains cloaked in lies. But Machiavelli teaches us that deception, at its core, is simply the ability to influence perception. And, in the hands of someone ethical, aware, and deliberate, it can be used not to destroy, but to navigate complexity, to survive, to adapt. In the next section, we'll examine how these principles have evolved into the fabric of modern politics, corporate life, and personal relationships, and how you can use them subtly to protect your peace, gain influence, and achieve your goals without losing your soul. What once echoed through the marble halls of Renaissance palaces now hums beneath the fluorescent lights of boardrooms, political rallies, and even your neighborhood coffee shop. Machiavelli's insights weren't bound to his era. They were rooted in timeless psychological truths about fear, desire, and the ever-shifting masks people wear to survive. So let's pull back the curtain on the 21st century Machiavellian. They don't wear crowns, they don't sit on thrones, but their influence is just as real. Consider the modern political campaign. It's less about truth and more about narrative. Candidates rehearse every word. Their smiles are engineered. Their outrage is often calibrated. They tell stories not to inform, but to influence. This is Machiavelli in motion. He once wrote, "It is not necessary for a prince to have all the virtues, but it is necessary to appear to have them." And today, we see this philosophy everywhere. Crafted slogans, emotional appeals, and the strategic use of scandals, both real and manufactured. The truth may be buried under layers of spin, but perception, that's weaponized. In debates, politicians often don't answer the question. They redirect it. Why? Because in the theater of persuasion, controlling the narrative is more valuable than sharing the truth. It's not honesty that wins elections. It's the illusion of strength, empathy, and control. Now step into the world of corporate negotiation. In boardrooms across the world, executives practice controlled disclosure, offering just enough truth to win trust, while withholding the cards that could give others the upper hand. They use tactics Machiavelli would admire, framing a failure as a pivot, pretending openness while quietly scheming mergers, appearing collaborative while executing zero-sum strategies. And it works. In business, knowledge is leverage. Deception, when used surgically, becomes not cruelty, but strategy. Take planned spontaneity, a technique used in product launches where companies leak fake features to gauge competitor response or exaggerate demand to create artificial scarcity. It's all about managing perception, controlling expectations, and bending reality in your favor. That's not just marketing. That's modern Machiavellianism, but perhaps the most intimate and controversial application of Machiavelli's wisdom is in our personal lives. We all manage impressions, omit truths, and tailor our behavior depending on who we're with. That's not necessarily manipulation. It's survival in a complex social world. Machiavelli would argue that we do this instinctively, but the truly effective person does it consciously. In dating, people emphasize their best qualities and downplay flaws. That's the art of appearing virtuous. In friendships, we sometimes keep opinions to ourselves, not out of dishonesty, but to maintain harmony. In conflict, we might feign indifference to keep the upper hand, or strategically forgive to keep enemies close. Is this dishonest? Or is it emotionally intelligent? That depends on intent. When used to protect, resolve, or understand, it's strategic empathy. When used to control, deceive, or hurt, it becomes exploitation. The difference lies in awareness and responsibility. The key to using Machiavellian strategies in everyday life is subtlety. These aren't tools for domination. They're instruments for navigation. You don't need to lie to use Machiavelli. You just need to be aware of what people want to believe, how to frame your truth effectively when silence says more than honesty ever could. It's not about becoming a villain. It's about becoming a student of human behavior, understanding not just what people say, but what they hide, not just what they show, but what they fear. In a world where deception is often weaponized, the greatest power lies not in out-deceiving others, but in recognizing the game before it plays you. As we move forward, we'll confront the moral dilemma. Can these strategies be used ethically? Because while Machiavelli gave us the playbook, he never gave us the rule book. That's up to you. In the next section, we'll explore the ethical tightrope, how to use psychological strategy without becoming the very thing we fear. At this point, a question lingers, maybe even burns. If we use deception, even strategically, are we not just manipulating others? Are we not becoming the villain? This is where Machiavelli's philosophy becomes polarizing. His ideas are razor-sharp, effective, but also morally ambiguous. Let's be clear, the prince doesn't flinch in its pragmatism. Machiavelli advises lying if truth is inconvenient, betraying if loyalty is a weakness, and using cruelty if it secures power. So how do we reconcile this with modern values? Compassion, transparency, fairness. The answer is not found in extremes, it's found in intention. There is a profound difference between strategic deception and malicious manipulation. Strategic deception is often temporary, minimal, and purposeful, used to navigate fragile egos, avoid unnecessary conflict, or protect privacy. It's a form of social buffering. Think of a leader downplaying internal panic to maintain morale, or a parent softening the truth to spare a child's anxiety. These aren't acts of betrayal, they are acts of protection, rooted in empathy. But when deception becomes a tool for personal gain at the expense of others, the line is crossed. That's exploitation. That's what gives Machiavelli his dark reputation, and what you must avoid if these strategies are to serve something greater than ego. The ethics of Machiavellian tools. Let's break down how to use key Machiavellian strategies ethically. Appear to be virtuous without being fake. Machiavelli urged rulers to appear honest, generous, kind, even if they weren't. In everyday life, this could become toxic if used to disguise malicious intent. But what if you flip it? Use this strategy to build rapport, to speak the language others understand. If someone trusts people who appear confident. If they need warmth to open up, offer it sincerely, even if it's not your default demeanor. This is not lying. It's adapting your presentation to match your audience, a skill any great communicator must master. The ends justify the means, but only if the ends are ethical. This phrase has been misused by tyrants and frauds alike. But its core concept, evaluating decisions based on outcome, can be useful. If your goal is to build a better team, close a vital deal, or resolve tension, a well-placed omission or calculated pause may be acceptable, so long as the outcome benefits more than just you. But if the means hurt, mislead, or exploit, then no outcome can justify them. Intent matters. So does impact. 3. Keep your enemies close, for clarity, not control. It's wise to understand those who oppose or challenge you, but not to manipulate them. Use this strategy to see the full chessboard, not to set traps. If you stay close to those who dislike or compete with you, you can better navigate their moves without resorting to sabotage. That's wisdom, not wickedness. Deception isn't always malicious, it's often instinctive. Psychologists call this social camouflage, the way people unconsciously hide vulnerabilities or embellish strengths to fit into groups or avoid conflict. We all do it, laughing when we're anxious, agreeing to avoid confrontation, downplaying our struggles in public. These small, everyday deceptions aren't evil. They're protective, and they echo Machiavelli's core insight. People are not always what they seem, not because they are cruel, but because they are afraid. Understanding this gives you power, not to harm, but to see deeper, to read the room, to hear what isn't said. It's not about being fake, it's about being fluid. Machiavelli gave us tools, but he left out a moral compass. He wasn't interested in how people should behave, only how they do behave. But you must make that ethical leap. You must ask, am I using this to build or to break? Am I protecting peace or manipulating perception? Am I leading with intention or hiding behind strategy? If you can answer these honestly, you can walk the tightrope between strategic deception and moral integrity. And that is the modern Machiavellian, not a villain in shadows, but a tactician of empathy, influence, and insight. In the next section, we'll explore specific real-world scenarios, political debates, high-stakes negotiations, even romantic dynamics, where Machiavellian strategies can be seen and, when wielded ethically, mastered. You'll learn how to disarm, outmaneuver, and lead without ever losing yourself in the process. Now that we've dissected the ethics of deception, it's time to step into the field. Machiavelli's strategies are not relics. They live in the sharp smiles of executives, the scripted pauses of politicians, and the carefully curated profiles. On dating apps, let's pull the curtain back on how these tactics unfold, silently, strategically, in the real world. We'll examine 5 real-life scenarios where Machiavellian insight isn't just useful, it's powerful. When applied with restraint and awareness, these tactics can help you lead, protect, and even inspire. The job interview, appearances, trump truth in an interview. The truth matters, but presentation matters more. Machiavelli's principle of appearing virtuous is central here. You don't lie. You frame, emphasize leadership over authority. Turn mistakes into learning moments. Highlight traits that mirror the company's values, even if they're not your strongest suit. You are, in essence, managing perception. And Machiavelli would remind you, it's not about being perfect, it's about being believable. Appear adaptable, appear driven, appear collaborative. If you must choose between being genuine and being effective, find a path where you can be both. Negotiations. Control the narrative in business deals. The battlefield isn't facts, it's framing. Machiavelli's idea that he who controls appearances controls outcomes is the blueprint. Take the tactic of anchoring, setting a strong initial offer to psychologically frame the negotiation. It doesn't have to be accepted, it just has to shape expectation, or the use of strategic silence, a pause long enough to make the other party question their confidence. It's not deception, it's psychological pressure. Consider this. Rather than showing desperation to close a deal, act with detachment, not arrogance, calculated calm. Make them want your partnership more than you want theirs. In the Machiavellian mind, power comes not from aggression, but from controlled restraint. Romantic relationships, emotional strategy, not manipulation. Here's where many get it wrong. Machiavelli is not a manual for playing with hearts, but his insights into human psychology can help navigate complex emotional terrain. Take mirroring, subtly adapting your energy, tone, or expressions to match your partner's. It builds subconscious rapport, or consider timing emotional revelations. Being vulnerable too soon can overwhelm. Waiting too long can seem distant. The key is reading the emotional atmosphere, responding, not reacting. Machiavelli would say, reveal your hand only when it strengthens your position. In love, that means honesty delivered with timing and tact. For leadership, fear, respect, or influence. One of Machiavelli's most debated ideas is this: it is better to be feared than loved if one cannot be both. But fear doesn't mean tyranny. It means clarity of consequence. A strong leader doesn't need to raise their voice. They simply ensure that boundaries are known and enforced. However, the modern Machiavellian doesn't rule by fear. They lead through influence, the subtle power of consistency, expectation, and emotional intelligence. They listen more than they speak. They study group dynamics before asserting control. They give credit publicly, but correct privately. Power to them is not dominance, it's direction. Conflict and crisis turn weakness into leverage. In times of uncertainty, people crave confidence. Machiavelli taught that in chaos, a leader must project certainty, even if they are unsure, because perception of control becomes control. Take public speaking during a PR crisis. The facts may be murky, but if you speak with clarity, offer structure, and frame a forward path, you don't just regain trust, you redirect the emotional narrative. You don't have to lie, but you must lead with the perception of strength. In personal conflicts, this means staying composed when provoked, showing restraint when attacked, listening when it would be easier to defend. Machiavelli didn't just speak to kings. He spoke to anyone who must lead in uncertainty. Every scenario above shares one truth. The most powerful person is often the one who sees the invisible threads, the power dynamics, emotional cues, and hidden agendas others miss. Machiavelli teaches us not to deceive blindly, but to observe intelligently. When you understand how perception shapes outcomes, how fear alters behavior, and how silence speaks louder than truth, you gain something rare: strategic clarity, not to exploit, but to lead, to protect, to win, without becoming a tyrant. In the final section, we'll bring everything full circle. You'll learn how to internalize Machiavelli's teachings as a mindset, not a mask, to apply them with self-awareness, build authentic influence, and walk through a world of illusion without losing your identity. Because deception is not just about others. It begins with understanding yourself. There's a truth most never realize. The greatest deception isn't what we show others, it's what we hide from ourselves. Machiavelli's power was not just in strategy, it was in clarity. He saw the world for what it was, not what he wished it to be. That clarity is not cold, it's freeing. To live Machiavellian is not to lie, manipulate, or cheat. It is to see things clearly, to understand the machinery of power, emotion, and perception, and to use that awareness to navigate life with intelligence, not illusion. But it requires one thing above all: radical self-awareness. Everyone wears a mask. You do, I do. Even the most authentic people shape how they are seen. The Machiavellian mindset doesn't condemn the mask, it studies it. Ask yourself, what image do I project in different settings? What traits do I exaggerate? And which ones do I hide? Where am I being strategic, and where am I being reactive? To master deception ethically, you must first master the illusions you live inside. Because if you don't understand your own performance, you'll never control how the world perceives it. Machiavelli's most underrated quality wasn't his cunning. It was his observation. He didn't just advise rulers, he watched them, studied their rise, recorded their fall. He understood that human behavior follows patterns, and patterns can be predicted. Adopt this mindset. Watch before acting. Listen before responding. Read people as if every gesture is a paragraph. In everyday life, this means noticing who interrupts, who seeks approval, who flinches at confrontation. These cues tell you everything if you know how to see. Power flows to those who anticipate, not just react. To use Machiavelli's strategies is to live in duality. You must know how to act with kindness and how to act with control, when to be open and when to withhold. Too much light, you'll be taken advantage of. Too much shadow, you'll lose trust. The modern Machiavellian must embrace this paradox, to be both the sheep and the wolf, to speak softly, but carry a map of every battlefield, to offer empathy, but never be disarmed by it. Mastery comes not from choosing one side, but from knowing both, and choosing the one the moment demands. Let's be clear, influence does not require corruption. Yes, Machiavelli endorsed strategies we may find unethical, but the deeper lesson is that strategy itself is neutral. It is the intention behind it that defines its morality. Tactical integrity means speaking truths in ways people are ready to hear, withholding not to deceive, but to protect timing, guiding decisions not by force, but by framing. This isn't about trickery, it's about elevation. helping others move in directions they wouldn't have chosen on their own, because you understood what they couldn't yet see. That is not manipulation. That is leadership. So here we stand, with Machiavelli in one hand and a mirror in the other. The true prince, the modern strategist, is not someone who schemes in darkness. It is someone who walks through a world full of masks with eyes wide open, someone who understands that power, when wielded with purpose, is not evil, it is transformative. To apply these principles in your life, define your goal clearly. Influence means nothing without direction. Read your environment. Who holds power? Who fears what? Who needs what? Shape perception ethically. Don't lie, but tell the truth like a story, not a weapon. Control emotion, yours and theirs. Stillness is not weakness. It is your shield. Adapt fluidly. Don't cling to identity, cling to awareness. Flexibility is survival. We began this journey in the shadow of a name, Machiavelli, feared, misunderstood, revered. But what we discovered is not a guide to villainy, it's a guide to awareness. In a world full of illusions, the true art of deception isn't about becoming the most feared, it's about becoming the most aware of others, yes, but more importantly, of yourself, because when you know who you are, when you know what you stand for, what you're willing to bend, and what you'll never break, then deception no longer controls you. You control it. And in that mastery, you don't lose your soul. You sharpen it. This is not just the art of deception. This is the art of understanding power and never letting it own you. See you in the next video.